Well, the impact of those explosions at the Arkema chemical plant is an environmental concern. Kara Cook is the Toxic Program Director for the U.S. Public Interest Research Groups. She joins us now by phone from Denver. Kara, when you look at the scene, what are the major concerns here while these fires continue to burn?
Well, as we know, the big problem is that we have a chemical plant that has not only had multiple explosions over the past few days, but could have future explosions over the next couple of days. It is currently spewing unknown toxic chemicals into the environment and into the waters around Crosby, Texas. Back in 2014, this plant warned that in the case of an explosion, over 1 million residents in the greater Houston area would have to be evacuated. So this causes great concern for human health and the environment.
You mentioned that 1 million would have to be evacuated. So if this does in fact happen, what is the sense? I mean, are there evacuation orders right now for these folks?
So far, the only evacuation order I know about is for a radius of about 1 mile and about over 3,000 residents.
Do you think that's enough?
Well, so that's what the first responders on the scene believe. The difficulty here is that the chemical plant has not provided a lot of information to the public about what chemicals are actually being stored at their facility. So it's hard for people to really know, is this enough? All we know is that there are problems with people on the scene, first responders with respiratory problems, with eye irritation. This indicates that there is toxic chemicals being spewed into the air currently.
So, Kara, when you look at the long-term lasting effects that could come from these fires, what do you think the lasting effects on the environment would be?
We know that in past hurricanes in the Houston area, when these chemical facilities have been stirred up and when their chemicals have been spewed into the environment, we've seen massive environmental damage, huge fish kills, and those kinds of things not only damage the environment, but damage the people near these facilities. All these chemicals are being sprayed into residential areas that are right next to these facilities in the area. So we're concerned not only about the environment, but also about people's homes and people's lives.
For those of us who aren't familiar with these types of chemicals, this type of plant, what makes this type of fire so especially harmful?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the organic peroxides that are currently at the scene are extremely volatile. In other words, they might explode, and we're not really sure when that will happen. So the danger is that if there are first responders on the scene, there might be another explosion, and then it might be larger than the past explosions have been. The other thing is that there are other chemicals currently being stored at this facility that are part of the petrochemical industry and other plastic industry, and we don't know all the chemicals at this plant at this time. So when those are exploding into the environment, that's going into the air that people are breathing.
So could these fires have been avoided?
Yeah, there are a couple of ways that these fires could have either been avoided or at least limited. First of all, these chemical plants shouldn't be allowed in floodwaters next to residential areas. Second of all, there is a plan that is currently that was established by the Obama administration that's currently being blocked by the Trump administration. And what that would do is it would require these plants to work with government regulators and with workers to come up with safety and emergency preparedness plans. So that might have actually required these plants to come up with better refrigeration units and more backup generators to make sure that these explosions didn't happen.
There's so much to think about, Kara. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, how bad do you think this could potentially be?
I am hoping that it doesn't get a lot worse, and my heart goes out to everyone in the area and the first responders on the scene, and that's the best I can hope for.
All right, Kara Cook, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate your time and explaining this complicated fire to us.
Thank you for having me.